Hello and welcome to another live windsurf coaching. Happy Easter if you celebrate Easter. Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Excuse me, I just had to sneeze. Hello, how is everyone doing? You're having a good Easter if you're celebrating Easter. Did you sail this week? If you did sail, how was it? I sailed. This day was super fun that I have the video from, and sailed a few other days too, but this I had a really good Friday session. Seems like Matt did as well. Awesome. York, happy Easter. Suna, Axel, Greg. We got the gang here. Love to see it. Yeah, I had a really fun session on Good Friday, and I haven't been on the water since the last couple days. But this week I think also looks windy, so maybe even today. We'll see how the day shakes out. Um, yeah, we've got a lot of good content to go through in the Facebook group, and you guys know the drill. You can always interrupt me, ask your questions. Axel said, lots of wind skating this week. Awesome. Yeah, this video is from my session on Good Friday. I posted the whole session on YouTube. It's 14 and a half minutes long. So this is everything that uh, was filmed for that day. York is asking if this is a new version of the Ezzy Wave. No, it's not. It is a prototype for the current version. So it's the same sail as the current version, but just with some slightly different colors. But with the Ezzy sails, you can always order custom colors. It takes a little bit longer, but not that much longer. You've got to go through either a distributor, or I could point you in the right direction, but you can actually get custom colors on the sails. Happy Easter, Ragnar. Too much food, not much sailing. But he has booked for Gran Canaria. Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so this session was a lot of fun. It was really windy, way windier than Hokipa normally is. And the waves were pretty small. A lot of the pros are in Chile for the World Cup there, which meant there were a lot of waves to be had. It was a lot of fun. Very high intensity session. Someone could count. I think I was on the water for, I'd have to check, maybe 2 hours, um, maybe a little bit less. So someone could count how many waves I got in that time, and you could figure out the frequency, how many waves a minute or how many waves in an hour, something like that. But anyway, in general, pretty fun session. Felt good to be on the water. We've got Rob in the chat, had a nice sail on Friday. Nice, side shore and good waves. Awesome. Graham also 4-7 at Platboom, 4-2 in Glencairn. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So if you want to watch this session, the whole video is on YouTube. I posted it in the Facebook group as well. It's also on my YouTube channel. It's, I think, 14 minutes long. There's no sound. Play your own music. And yeah, maybe there's something interesting to learn. A couple of things that I find interesting in it, you can see the cycles where I have a few good waves in a row and then some not so good waves. And then towards the end, I start getting tired, and you can see that my performance starts dropping because of that. And yeah, I think that's interesting to see, because it means that it's normal and that you shouldn't feel bad yourself when such things happen to you. Yeah, but fun session. All right, I'm gonna load up the Facebook group. We're gonna get into the questions for today. You guys can interrupt me in the chat if you want. All right, let's get the Facebook group loaded up. All right, here we are. So first things first, on the admin side, for the masterclasses that are happening on Maui, the Forward Loop weekend, the Learn to Loop weekend, the dates are decided. It's going to be the weekend of the 20th to the 21st, the Saturday and Sunday. If you are on Maui, or if you want to travel to Maui and you want to improve your loops, the Learn to Loop weekend is going to be awesome. It's not for everyone. It's an accelerated looping program to do over 2 days to help get you on the right journey and make a lot of progress on that journey in a very compressed amount of time, in a very short amount of time, and learning the proper skills, exercises, and technique so that you're learning the forward loop in a way where, one, it's not as scary, two, you don't have to jump off that fear cliff, which makes it a lot more accessible and makes it so that you're training the right technique from day one. So you don't have to unlearn bad habits. We got Nico in the chat. Hello, Nico. So that's happening on Maui. Also, today is the last day to influence the dates for Windsurfing Masterclass Maui 2024. This is happening in May. Currently, the winning dates are the 11th of May to the 17th of May. This is when the most people can make it work. After today, after midnight Maui time today, I am going to close this question on the survey. You can still sign up for a limited amount of time, but you can no longer affect the dates. And right now, the dates that are winning are the 11th till the 17th. All right, we got Christoph in the chat from Santa Cruz. I'm really looking forward to doing this coaching on Maui. The forward loop weekend will be great, and the wave sailing masterclass as well. There's so many fun things that you can do on Maui. Introduction to Hokipa, a lot of wave sailing basics. I'm really looking forward to this coaching. All right, next up, I asked about your coaching questions for this week, and we've got a few answers. So Manu asked about the loose leech, referring to sail design. And I think that this is a little bit difficult to say, because what does loose leech mean? Right, there's a spectrum of loose leech, and saying that a sail is a loose or tight leech doesn't mean much without talking about in relation to another sail. Our sails, the sails that I'm using with Ezzy sails, are pretty tight leached. They're not super loose leech. They don't take a lot of downhaul, and I like that feeling. I like that sort of alive, responsive feeling. The freestyle sails have super tight leeches. I feel like the really loose leech sails have gone out of style. People like the way that a little bit of a tighter leech feels compared to, say, 15 years ago. It's not true anymore that you just want to download the hell out of your sails. Um, but I'm curious what other people think as well. There's so many aspects to a sail that it's hard to say. Like, for example, with the Ezzy sails, they don't get a lot of their shape from the luff curve, and so they can have a tighter leech, but still have shape. Whereas a sail that's getting curve is probably going to end up having a looser leech. Greg asks, when is the wind coming back? And I do not know. I do not know. Hans asks, what is the best combination for wave sailing and family sailing? He's looking at Boa Vista. I think what I've heard, I've never been there, but from what I've heard, Viana, Portugal also offers that combination. Otherwise, Tenerife does, because you can windsurf in the bay, which is very beginner friendly, and then you can have world-class wave sailing in Cabezo. Other spots, Maui, that might be a little far for you, Hans, but Maui definitely does. Maui offers everything. Maui has the best wave sailing, some of the best wave sailing in the world, and also great flat water, windsurfing, warm water, easy waves as well at Kanaha or Sprex. All right, next up, we've got a question from Steve Thorpe about tweaked airs. How do you change your approach compared to a normal air? It's very similar to a normal air where you're doing a bit of a bottom turn. It's different than like a straight down the line aerial, but pretty similar to those airs where you do a little bit of a bottom turn. I would say the key with the tweaked air is leading it from the hips. So not thinking about the feet, but thinking about getting the hips turned and then letting that guide the legs to whip around. And that way it's really similar to a tabletop. The way that you do a tabletop is not thinking about getting your feet up, but about twisting your hips. And by twisting your hips, then you are able to sort of whip your legs around. I see like a mark on my screen. Is that, you guys see that as well? No. All right. Next question. Mike says, what is going on with the board and where it sits on the wave when you take off for an aerial off the lip? He often wants to crank a top turn and offer the bottom of the board and pivot around. But he watches the windsurf aerials and they seem to have the board almost flat parallel to the ocean and take off as they head up the ramp. Or sometimes if the lip is pitching, you see the board almost being flicked from under them and you see the rider launch the air, then stabilize the board. Good question, great question. So with the aerial, it's really important not to think of it like a jump. It's not like a ramp where you're pushing off the wave. It's more like you're sailing into the curl of the wave. And having that curl on the wave makes it a lot easier than if it's crumbly. Having that curl on the wave, and you're fitting that board inside the curl and steering it down the line and keeping that momentum down the line, not trying to go back to the beach, and letting the power of the wave transfer into the board. And so it's an ultimate high five moment. We talk a lot about the high five, presenting the bottom of the board to the power of the wave. And this is the aerial, the down the line aerial, or up the, you can do this backside also. When you get it right, is really an ultimate example of the high five because you've got that bottom of the board lined up and you're timing it exactly. So as the wave is throwing, the bottom of the board is there and it hits the bottom of the board and projects it. And then you can lean back and sheet in and use the wind to help you fly. But that initial projection is all coming from the wave. It comes from getting the bottom of the board so that it hits the curl of the wave as it's pushing forward, hits that bottom of the board. Really, really, really key for landing aerials back in front of the wave. Hopefully that's helpful. I can dig up some more video as well and show it another time. All right, next up, Ragnar has got a video for us. So when I use gloves like this, I get crazy forearm cramp. It's really hard for me to windsurf with gloves like that. That makes sense, and that's what I see a lot of people using, these gloves. Oh, you guys can't hear the sound? Oh, interesting. Oh. Hmm. If the sound doesn't work, I don't know how to make the sound work. I assume that it did. Can you guys not hear the sound? Rob is saying he can't hear the sound. I assume that when I'm porting in the browser that the sound comes through as well. Huh, okay. Well, if that's the case, we can just sort of watch and I can narrate it. So this is a solution that Ragnar has come up with for really cold water windsurfing. And so this is um, these are, so this is a heated glove, which is very interesting. They have batteries. That's kind of crazy. They've got batteries, gloves with batteries. You can, and so the gloves, they're electronically heated. That sounds wild, but apparently they do work in the water. And then wearing kitchen gloves on top. And so I've heard a lot of people using kitchen gloves. I've tried it myself. I find that it can work well. It definitely, even if you don't have the heated gloves underneath, it helps take the sting away from the cold air. Um, so really interesting. I wonder how the heated gloves work underneath. Okay, next up is my video. This is what I was just talking about, where I've got my whole session. You can click on this, takes you to YouTube, and it's like about 14 and a half minutes long. And yeah, this is my whole session. So you can check it out if you're curious. Axel has a question. He says that, can I comment on the return of the rounded pintail? It used to be the most common tail shape, but it has been displaced by variants of the swallow and squash tail. Now it seems to be coming back. Is it a change of fashion? Or is it related to the fin setup? Meanwhile, we got Thomas in the chat. Hello, Thomas. So for my rounded pins, I asked my shaper, Fabian Vollenweider from Taboo, to make me two boards. And I've been very involved in the shapes of my boards over the last 2 years. And I felt like I wanted to get away from that. I wanted to let him design it. But I had a few conditions. I said, okay, I want two boards that are both 88. I want a short one and a long one. And I want them both to be rounded pins. And within that, do whatever you want. And so Fabian came up with these single concave boards that are based on the decurve, the 2024 decurve shape. It's also moving to a single concave, but within my requirements. So the short one is under 220. The long one I think is 230, which is very long for an 88-liter board. But I wanted that balance, and I've been having a lot of fun on the short one. Really interesting. I got this board in, I guess it was like November, and I didn't like it. I tried it on Maui, and I did not like it. And I went back to my old boards, and since I've been back on Maui now, I've been trying to get comfortable, and I've not been comfortable on my old board. So I pulled out this new one, and it's really fun. So it's a very strange thing. I have this with boards a lot where the first time I try a new board, I don't like it that much. But then my old boards start feeling stale, which can happen. I think it's really good to have a quiver of boards if you can afford it, because it helps keep your riding more dynamic, because you can get kind of stuck in a certain way of sailing with just one board. So anyway, so then I went back to this board, and I've had a really, really good time. I like the shorter shape. It helps with the tricks. In the last few years, I've focused a lot on these long, drawn-out turns, and it's nice to have a board that is similar to the boards that I had maybe 10 years ago. It's not similar in any way in terms of the bottom shape, but in terms of the length. Um, this is actually even shorter than those boards. But anyway, I've gotten longer in my boards over the last 10 years, and that's made it harder and harder to do the tricks. And so it's nice to have a board that works well for the tricks. And I wanted a rounded pintail because I feel like that transition between the rails is something that a rounded pin is a little bit easier for. And yeah, that was kind of my feeling. Tail shape, it definitely can make a difference. Uh, but anyway, I wanted a rounded pin on these boards, and so that's why. That's why. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, Axel, but that is why I've gone with these boards, and I've been very happy with this one. I've had a lot of fun with it, but not initially. My first few sessions were not fun. I was bouncing. I didn't like the board. Bart has had 2 fun days of down the line and 2 bump and jump days. Awesome. Yeah, so Bart says the nose of the board in the footage looks crazy as those early 2000 wave boards sits really high out of the water. Does it sit high out of the water? Let's watch it and see. It's very short. Um, so yeah, maybe it's got a little bit more upturn in the nose because like more nose rocker because the board is so short, right? The board it's under 220. I'd have to measure it. I don't know exactly how long it is, but it's definitely on the shorter side. And I'm riding pretty far back on the board as well, and that will also make the nose um, stick up more. Um, so Axel has not had much sailing. Rob says that he missed the U-shaped turns chat. Do you have a head uh, way in front of the wave, or is it possible to get vertical with a normal distance in front of the wave and just carve super hard? Yeah, you don't have to go way out in front of the wave. In fact, I would say that you want to avoid going way out in front of the wave um, because that will kill your speed. I don't know if this example, let's see. Oh, I've still got the live start soon message. Oops, let's take that off. So let's see if this example, if any of these waves offer more of a U-shaped bottom turn. I'm not sure if they do, but we can check it out and see. But no, you do not need to go very far out in front of the wave. And in fact, you should be aiming to stay closer on the wave. Something I want to show here, which is such a small thing, but is really important, is I'm driving out of this wave before I ride it. So rather than investing all of that time and energy to come into the beach on a wave that is actually small and not worth riding, I jibe out of it and go back out. And that is something that I think a lot of windsurfers can adopt, and that will improve their session. They'll catch better waves and have more fun on those waves because instead of spending your time coming in on a wave that's not worth riding, you just get out the back before it's too late. Because if you come all the way in and then you've got to go through the whitewaters again, it wastes a lot of time and it wastes a lot of energy. Okay, so this turn is not super U-shaped, but it's a little bit U-shaped. And you can see that I'm just coming right in front of the wave. I'm not going very far in front of the wave. You can do it even less. Those are not the most UE bottom turns. But anyway, the point is no, you do not have to go very far out in front of the wave. All right. Next up, very interesting question from Andre. And it's more about the life of a windsurfer rather than a technical windsurfing question. And I love questions like this because I think that these topics are really important. They're really important for getting better, for having fun, and they're very worth talking about. So if you have a question, a comment, a success, or a frustration, something that's related to windsurfing. So for example, Andre's asking, how do you get better? Do you count your sessions? You know, what is your plan? So he talks about 10,000 hours, and this is something that I was very conscious of when I was a kid and getting better in windsurfing is something my dad always said is you got to get your 10,000 hours. And that comes out of, I believe, a Malcolm Gladwell book. And I believe it's been disproved that the 10,000 hour theory, that 10,000 hours leads to mastery. I believe that has been disproved, that there's issues with the research there. But that said, if you're spending 10,000 hours at something, you're going to get pretty good at it. And that's something that I was pretty conscious of. It's like, okay, I want to get my 10,000 hours as quickly as possible. And so I try to get on the water, 3 hours a day, every day if I could. And this is, so not the 10,000 hours, but this attitude is, I think, what leads to rapid improvement, and it's something that you see with the pros. I think there's a big misconception. You think pro windsurfers and oh, they sail in the best conditions, and that's why they're getting better. But it's actually the opposite. We had the experience last year on the windsurfing masterclass in Denmark that I was coaching. Conditions- The conditions were not very good, and we are at the beach, and we had this a few times. I think we had 2 or 3 times during the course of that masterclass where the conditions were not very good, and there was only 1 or 2, 3 people on the water. And who were the people on the water? They were all professionals. So light wind, small waves, shitty conditions. Mark Paré on the water. He's not even Danish. He's up there. He's on the water. Um, the other days, I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was only pros on the shitty days. And it was such a good lesson for the group. And I was really able to show this point because it's like, the people who are out when the conditions are shitty are the pros, and that's how they get so good. And so if you're getting out more often, by definition, that means you're sailing a wider variety of conditions. By definition, that means that you're sailing shittier conditions. And that forces you to work on different things. So, for example, I'm working on a course now that will be an online course. This called No Wave Sailing, and a whole section of the course is working on different water starts, different kinds of water starts. Now, you might be thinking that's boring, or I know how to water start, but if you're getting into the waves, there's so many different kinds of ways to water start, and if you can master them all, it gives you much more confidence because you can get out of tricky situations faster. And it also allows you to get around the break, catch better waves, be in the right position because you're able to get on the board right away. You're not spending time getting worked. You're not spending time on the water because you can just water start in any condition. Doesn't matter if what direction the board is or the sail is. Yeah, someone in the chat on Facebook is saying clue first, water starts. Exactly, clue first, tail first. And so we go through all of these options. So in this course, the No Wave Sailing course, this is the section that I'm working on right now, is on these different kinds of water starts. And there's actually really a big variety. I think I've got like 7 different kinds of water starts that you can train. And the point is that you can do this if there's no waves. You can do this if there's almost no wind. And I did this when I was a kid. I would go down to Kanaha if there was no wind. I had a big board, kind of a big freestyle board. And even if there's no wind, I would go out and do sail tricks. Even if it was, I mean, if it's glassy, you can't do that much. But even if in, 2 to 5 knots, I would go and flip the sails around and doing sail 360s or helitax or whatever else it is. Um, and Bart is saying that the non-pros have to work when the conditions are good. Yeah, there's some truth to that. But also, I see a lot of people come down to the beach and they see the conditions, they're not good, and they go and do something else, or they just sit and watch. Whereas if you're ready and you have a plan, you can go out even if the wind is shit, even if the waves are small, and you can get better and you can have fun. And this is my biggest sort of big takeaway point that I want people to have and to take away from this is that working on these things, even though we use the word work, doesn't make it less enjoyable. It makes it more enjoyable because then you have something to work on and you have a sense of accomplishment when you succeed. And you can do that when the conditions are poor and helps you have more fun, helps you get better. And like Andre is pointing out here, time on the water is really, really important. So getting in the time, getting in the days is really, really important. So to answer his first question, I don't track my days. So actually, I don't know how many days I get a year. Last year, I didn't get that many days. Last year was probably my worst year ever. When I was going to university, also, I was not getting that many days, though I was spending my summers in the Canaries and windsurfing all the time those years. So I've had a few years where I haven't had that many days, but otherwise, I guess I'm somewhere around between 150 and 200 days, roughly. Um, but last year was less. Last year I was maybe between 60 days or something. Not so many for a professional. Busy year. All right. Second part of the question: how many days, hours did the top ranking windsurfers spend to get to such a level? I think this is interesting, but it's also somewhat misleading because what does it mean to get to a level? And so if I look at footage of myself when I was 15 and I'd been windsurfing for 5, 6 years, it those videos that I see now, I'm like, whoa, I'd be happy if I did that today. And there's a video on YouTube from 2006. So I would have been, that was the year I was 15. And so you can watch it. You can see my level when I was 15. And it was already pretty high. And that's the same with Brasinho or Levi or Mussolini or Coster. You know, Coster won a World Cup at 15 or 16. And so you can, if you're young and you're in the right place, you can get good really fast, but it's a certain kind of good. It lacks a certain well-roundedness and consistency. And so I think a lot of the top pros, they get really good in their teens quite quickly, and then they spend the next 10 or 20 years uh, rounding everything out, getting more consistent, being able to do it in a greater variety of conditions. And so what we mean when we say at the level or at the top level, I think needs to be defined. Um, but putting in the time is really important. Having a learning process is really important. Having peers is really important. So something that doesn't come up here, but I think is really important for getting better, is having peers. If you are windsurfing with a friend or a group of friends, or you don't even have to like each other, you don't even have to be friends, but someone or a group of someone's of a similar level, and you're pushing each other, that is magic for improvement. What's really important to remember as well is that learning requires being uncomfortable. And so you have to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. And so if you're focusing on doing sessions where you keep your hair dry, by definition, that means you're not learning. By definition, that means what you're doing is just what you know how to do. And so focusing on getting your hair wet, focusing on crashing, means that you're learning, you're progressing. You're not embarrassed to try new things. Um, so that's a little bit of a roundabout answer. And the third part of the question is, how did you organize your life around windsurfing? And by the way, this is a really interesting question from Andre, and he's inviting everyone to answer. We've got some really good answers from other people in the comments. If you haven't given your answer yet to Andre's post, I suggest you do, because I think this is a really interesting question. It's really interesting to read the responses. I'm enjoying reading the responses. So put your story in the chat. So how do you organize your life around windsurfing? I think for me as a pro, one thing that I do is I don't commit to very much far in advance. And I will commit to a few things like weddings or something. And those things, I know that there's no chance of going windsurfing. And I just totally mark off the opportunity. I'm like, okay, I've got a wedding, May 4th to 5th. I am not going to be windsurfing those days. But otherwise, someone wants to make a plan with me and it's at 2 in the afternoon. I say, nope, sorry, I can't do that because Maui is windy during the afternoons when it's windy. So we can meet in the morning or late in the evening, but not in the afternoon. And by not committing to things in the possible windsurfing windows, then I don't have to cancel them, which is then obviously tough. And again, I'm in a little bit of a different situation because I do this for a living. So my wife has to be more understanding. She knew this is what she was getting into. Otherwise, I think you can make an arrangement with your partner where you have a certain period where you're going to commit to your windsurfing, and then other periods where it's less so, and you can time that with a windy season. So if it's windy in June and July where you live, you can say to your partner, June and July, it's really important for me to get in as many days as I can. But in August and September, where it's less windy, um, I'm going to be less focused on it, and we're going to be focusing on something else, going bike riding together, or whatever it is. And then also being prepared. So having your gear in your car, having your gear organized in a way in your car that it's easy when you get to the beach. Like, you want to remove the friction. So I see some people where they have their gear stored in an attic, and then in order to get to the beach, they've got to take it out of the attic and load the car. And then if it's a sick forecast, yeah, okay, you're going to do it. But if it's not a sick forecast, you're not going to go through the hassle. And like we just said, getting those days where the conditions are not firing are really important for learning. They're really important for having fun. And if you're not doing it, then your system's not working. So keep the gear in the car, have it organized in a way where you have the right gear at the right time. And then making sure that you're looking at the forecast. So in Maui, I don't have to pay attention much because there's one or two beaches. Pretty much always go to Hokipa. But when I'm in Hamburg, different story. I need to be paying attention to the Baltic Sea, to Denmark, what's going on, where is it going on, and it can really help to have a network or a community who can help you with those forecasts. And so it's good to have a local WhatsApp group, pay attention to what's going on. Maybe have a little ritual where you're looking at windy or something where you're seeing a pretty big area. You're not just looking at one spot. All right, so I encourage you to put your story in the chat. Next up, we've got a post from Thomas about using the hip harness. I am going to use the hip harness myself. I've just got to get longer harness lines and adjust my harness. I've got my kids, I think they're telling me that it's time to finish up so that I can get back to Easter. And just like that, we're caught up in the group. And so I'm going to say goodbye, get back to the family, get back to the Easter celebrations, and hopefully get on the water. It's windy in the trees. A couple important admin things. If you want to sign up for the Maui Masterclass and influence the dates, the form is here. If you want to join the Learn to Loop Masterclass, yeah, I'll open it for you, buddy. We got some Kinder eggs. All right, everyone, I'm going to sign off. Have a wonderful Easter, a wonderful windy week. I'll see you next week, Sunday. If you want to join the looping weekend, sign up on the form. If you want to join the masterclass on Maui in May, fill out the form. We've got some other master classes coming up later in the year, and I will talk about those later as well. But the Maui ones are coming up first, and so if you want to join them, time is running out. All right, have a good windy week. I'll see you next week, Sunday. Bye-bye.